There's been upheaval and chaos within the men's rights space on TikTok. Innocent, vulnerable men are caught in the middle, not knowing which advocate to choose, not knowing who they can trust. But I'm here to say, trust the advocate that works for you. Nobody's asking you to pick a side. But in the midst of all of this, there's been fighting and videos and shit smearing back and forth. There's been hour-long lives or 5-hour-long lives with people screaming and yelling up all night, and men walking into the space thinking it's a safe space for men to have advocates calling each other name and dismissing each other's traumas. It's chaos. And it was quiet for a really long time. And then a new MRA arrived on the scene. And slowly over the course of about a month and a half to 2 months, chaos ensued. And this woman, Lola Advocate, her name's Christina. She's an Australian TikToker. She arrived on the scene. I know what you're thinking. This is about to be some epic takedown of this young female MRA that came into the space. Just another female chameleon coming in here to cause destruction within the men's rights movement for her own validation and clout. And I'm sorry to tell you, that's not what you're going to get. That's what everybody has assumed all along. They've assumed that she's been the one pulling the strings, that she came here to cause chaos and destroy the MRA movement. And that's how it was so easy for Aric Jaay to walk back into this space, say a few apologies, skirt accountability for his extremely bad behavior during this, behavior that resulted in putting multiple female MRAs' safety at risk. Throughout this process, Aric Jaay came forward and painted Lola as this sweet, innocent, vulnerable woman that he was being the savior for. He was going to protect her, and he would do anything for the woman that he loved. And then in the midst of this, the two of them broke up. And Aric had displayed some horrific behavior towards myself and many other MRAs in the space. But it was really easy for him to paint her as the manipulative woman, to walk back into the men's advocacy space and say, I'm sorry, guys. She manipulated me. She abused me. I didn't mean to do it. I know I did some really shitty stuff, but it was because of her. And everybody just believed it. It was so easy to believe. But what happened to false allegations ruin lives? What happened to someone's innocent until proven guilty? What happened to there's two sides to every story? It was really easy to scapegoat and blame it all on Christina and escape accountability for Aric Jaay. One of the undertones of this is that we were going after their relationship and talking about their relationship and digging into their relationship. And some of us had a lot of questions about what was going on, because when Christina stepped into this space, she was in a partnership and or marriage, as it was stated on the screen, with Josh, a man that was fighting for custody of his child in the Australian courts, a child custody battle that had gone on for 2 years. And then all of a sudden it came out that she was polyamorous, and then she was going to date Aric and Josh and Lola were going to be or Christina were going to be in a relationship. And then all of a sudden Josh was moving out of the house. Aric and Christina were madly in love, and Josh was gone from the scene. And all of a sudden, Josh is back and Josh is defending, and now Josh is being painted as this abuser, and he even came forward on TikTok and said he's an abuser. And we're like, what the fuck is going on? We had to ask questions. And in the midst of this, we're going, this shouldn't be happening in the men's rights space. Because we have these views, myself, Michelle, and Tadzie were demonized. We were painted as these horrible people. And every move we made and everything we did because we were concerned about the men's advocacy space. We did because we were concerned about men that were struggling with their mental health within this space. There's a reason why I haven't spoke out, because every time I even wanted to mention everything, everybody's like, don't feed into the drama. But why, when it's a man, is it a false allegation or reputation destruction? But when it's happening to a woman, it's just drama. Let me tell you, having people from your past that put you in danger, that called cops to your home, having toxic feminists that have destroyed multiple people within the MRA space, be unearthed and brought into a platform in which they advocate for men on, is not just drama. That puts men's mental health and safe spaces for men at risk. And we had huge concerns with that. And everybody seems to think by voicing those concerns, we were causing drama. A lot of people have been quick to forgive Aric within the space, but I'd like to know if he actually held himself accountable and told them how deplorable he was. Like, did he tell Rocco that he essentially painted him as a person that the only reason they were communicating with Christina is because they wanted to fuck her, and that he was a misogynist and an incel?
Speaking of friggin', TikTok people, I haven't done it yet, but after thinking about it, I am probably going to remove my access to like Texas, Rocco, and I'm just going to go through my list of people that I've supported, just because they don't really align with what I'm trying to do. And, thinking about the conversation with Rocco the other day and just like how he's trying to interact with just you and a couple other people, and just the way he's been interacting with your content doesn't sit well with me either. Also the fact that he's completely two-faced, he's very misogynistic, he's very, like you said, controlled by his shadow, which is clearly an incel.
Calling somebody a misogynistic incel is words that come out of the mouth of a feminist. It checks with Aric's past as an Indigenous feminist ally. But the man he called that to, within 24 hours of him and Christina's relationship ending, he was sitting in a live with him, laughing and joking, as if he hadn't said or thought those things about that person. Did he mention to Fanny that he believes and said that Fanny Adams and myself are the biggest manipulators and gaslighters on this app? Did he mention to Brian Carlson that his behavior is just enabled by Rocco and they enable each other's misogyny? Did he mention to Matt Chuli that he thinks he's a drunk, and that when he came into that live because he was angry about having a certain particular feminist in our space, that he thought he was an angry drunk and he was just jealous of Aric Jaay's relationship? I wonder if Aric has any intention of taking accountability for calling me a groomer and saying that I groom young women in this space. Why? Because I would like to help them. Because women experience different things in men's advocacy than men. And I like to help the females in this space because we need more women advocating for men. But what it appears to me is Aric was attempting to groom Christina, but he pointed the fingers at me. Did or will Aric Jaay take accountability for the things that he said about Alex account not found, Bad Yogi, Indigo, Eve, Katie, and so many others in this space? And he painted this narrative for Christina that we were all these bad, horrible people. But yet the second they broke up, Aric went running back to all of these horrible people. Did he take accountability? Will he take accountability? Or is he just going to paint the narrative that she manipulated him into thinking these things about people that she had never met until 2 months ago? I also have a question about Aric's recent custody battle, because he recently came forward and said that he finally won full custody of his son, which congratulations, Aric. I'm happy for you if that's the case. But I question that. And the reason why I question it is, listen to this thing in this video.
To ask me, 6-7 years ago, if there would ever be a future where I'd see that I would be the primary caregiver of my son, I would probably have laughed at you.
Now take a look at this post that Aric himself posted in 2021, where he says very clearly in the post that he has had custody of his child, full custody of his child, for 2 years. But that's not what really bugs me. Look at these words right here. Listen again.
To ask me, 6-7 years ago, if there would ever be a future where I'd see that I would be the primary caregiver of my son.
So he used the same exact words currently, just a few weeks ago, that he used way back in 2021 when he had already had custody of his child for 2 years. So did you recently go through a custody battle, or did you make this all up so that you could gain clout off of another community? Just like you did when you were an Indigenous feminist ally, just like you did when you were in the Black Lives Matter space. There's a reason why you have hate pages, sir, because you got a lot of questions. Did he mention to anybody in this that Lola suffers not only with a few very serious chronic illnesses, but also a very serious mental illness called DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, which means that Lola has multiple personalities. She has a system of alters that makes her very open to manipulation, that makes her very vulnerable to the words of others, because they're not just being taken in by her, they're being taken in by her alters. Did he mention to anybody that Josh, Lola's partner, is autistic, which makes him vulnerable to manipulation and also vulnerable to targets that attempt to trigger him into sensory meltdowns, which can come across as abusive when he's reacting to somebody else's behavior? Did he mention that he took a polyamorous couple that was incredibly happy and he inserted himself in the midst of the relationship and then talked to Lola for hours on end with hundreds of messages sent to her about why Josh wasn't good enough for her, why Aric would be a better man, why Josh was abusive, why Josh was the problem, ultimately leading Lola to make the decision that she wanted to open up their relationship to invite Aric in. Aric then stepped in and formed a relationship with Josh behind the scenes, planting the seed in Josh's head that he wasn't doing right by Lola, that he wasn't the good man, that he wasn't who Lola needed, while at the same time continuing to plant the seed within Lola that Lola was not safe with Josh, causing an eruption that resulted in Josh having an autistic meltdown in which he openly admits that he got angry. He wanted to leave the space and Lola wouldn't let him and he pushed her out of the way. And that was the moment that Aric swooped in to paint Josh as the abuser. Aric Jaay sees this opportunity to solidify in Christina's mind that Josh was an abusive man that she was not safe with. But he also took the opportunity to paint himself as this protector that would do anything to help and be there for her always. And he took it a step further. He didn't just do it with Christina. He went behind the scenes to the MRA group chat that had a bunch of other MRAs in it and told the story about how Josh abused Lola this evening and how Lola wasn't safe and how she was processing it and how Aric had been talking to her over the course of the last few weeks and was able to convince her that Josh was abusive. He was able to convince her that Josh was abusive. Do you hear what I'm saying? Aric Jaay attempted to convince a woman that the man that she was with, her loving partner that she is still with to this day, was abusing her. But Aric took it one step further and told the entire group chat that he was also abused by Josh. Aric, a man from Canada, was abused by Josh through a phone screen. Josh, an autistic man in a polyamorous relationship that is coming to terms with the fact that the man that they allowed within their relationship was trying to kick Josh out and take over Lola for himself. So yeah, he was upset. Yeah, he was reactive. Yes, he was in the midst of an autistic meltdown. And yes, he yelled, lost his temper, and took things a little bit too far that night. He reacted to the situation. He reacted to Aric's disrespect. And this is where the back and forth started on social media, the screaming and yelling lives, in which Aric exhibited some of the most deplorable behavior that I have ever seen. And a lot of people were attributing it to Christina, but Aric's mask was slipping and we were seeing who he really was. I know what a lot of people are going to say, but this is a one-off. He had some bad behavior. It's easy to forgive and forget. But this isn't the first time Aric has done something like this. This isn't the first time Aric has had this type of trouble online. He has touted frequently over the last couple weeks that he's been in this space for 2.5 years and he's proven himself, but he hasn't been in the men's advocacy space for 2.5 years. His account with men's rights content on it started in October of 2022. At one point in time, Aric Jaay was a Black Lives Matter activist, and he was very vocal within that community and worked alongside an organization called Stop the Violence. And I don't know what happened there, but apparently he stepped out of that space. And then he did some anti-convoy activism and some pro-mask and pro-vaccine activism. And then he found his way into the feminist and Indigenous space and became an Indigenous feminist ally.
No matter what I do, it's promoting men and...
Oh, hey, Aric. I'm not sure if you remember me. You probably don't. We crossed paths like a year or two ago. You were an Indigenous feminist ally all up and down this app preaching. And then you lost your job and you were asking for donations because, you know, you're a single parent and you lost your job and you needed some money. Fair enough. I'm not sure if you remember that. I definitely remember it though, because I gave you money. And now you're up here on Beyonce's internet talking shit about mothers and women. So all I want to know is, were you an Indigenous feminist ally, or are you for men's rights? Because you've done like a complete 180, and I'm not sure anything that comes out of your mouth has any bit of truth to it.
Aric Jaay was on an account called All About Aric. According to one of Aric's mutuals from his time as an Indigenous feminist ally, the reason for his account name All About Aric was because at one point in time, there was a Facebook hate group called All About Aric. What do you do so incredibly bad in life that you get an entire hate group or hate page made about you? And using that name on TikTok was his way to reclaim himself and reclaim the positivity of that name. An account that actually still exists on the app today, it's just deactivated. I would love for Aric to come forward and activate that account and allow us to see that content, see what happened in those days before he deactivated and walked away as an Indigenous feminist ally. And he will say that he wasn't, but there's evidence that he was. And there's many people that are still on the app today that know who Aric is and will not associate with him, want nothing to do with them. And honestly, when they were questioned and asked about this, a lot of them don't want to come forward because of what went down. I've been able to talk to these women, and I can't verify their stories because I wasn't there. But the overarching theme from them was that Aric threatened a woman within the Indigenous space from a burner account, sent her a death threat. And then when he was called out for it, he kind of played the I'm not going to advocate, I'll leave the space type of manipulation to get people to support him. And at that point in time, he had access to an Indigenous man's account, And he used that account to go into this woman's comment section and further harass her. That is when everything erupted within that space. And there's also people that recall particularly that at one point in time, he attempted to bribe somebody with money. Yeah, Aric attempted to bribe somebody with money to be on his side. Now, all of this is alleged, but you can read by these screenshots that are showing beside me, and you can pause and read what is being said. I will protect the identity of these women because none of them need to be attacked by Aric. But the biggest overarching theme in talking to any of them was to tell me to be careful because they were concerned. Because Aric attacked accounts, he mass reported, and he did damage not only to Indigenous women, but Indigenous men.
However, because white supremacy has used white women's pain and tears as a tool to perpetuate white supremacy and racism onto people of color, so much so that some white women lie, it makes sense for some people to be hesitant. And even in cases where it is 100% true, still there's a nuance of this white woman's tears and pain is going to be used to threaten the life of a man of color and to enact white supremacy and racism. That can.
Hey guys, so this message is going to be going out to Aric, all about Aric. I wasn't going to do this video, but then I see you still going around, and you made a video. I just blocked you, and then you went and go make a video, your apology, your fake apology, actually. Why I say it's fake is because you're still going around saying it's high school drama. You know how it all started? My voice. So you wouldn't listen to my voice, my opinion. You silenced my opinion because you had a different opinion. And then you said I was victim blaming Chelsea for my truths, my voice, and everybody else knows it's true. What I said was true. It's not problematic. White women tears are dangerous. It's true. If it was a Native woman, they wouldn't even give a shit. And I made a video about this. And I was crying too because it fucking hurts. And if you want to be an ally, you should be listening to Native women. Going around saying, it's not white women's tears. It's not a race issue. No, you need to sit down and you need to listen to Indigenous women. And if we tell you something, don't come at us in our inbox. That was awful. I felt awful and I need to say it. I need to speak it. You came at me into my inbox. Also, I'm going to show you guys this. Pause to read if you want, but It's a me problem. It's a me problem. We're victim blaming. He also tagged 3 women to come at me for my behavior because my comments were gross. My comments saying white women tears are dangerous were gross. Here's some more. Pause to read. So after he tagged those 3 women, I tagged some of my friends too. I tagged my native friends, and then he deleted my comment, and then he came at me in my inbox with this. What we're not going to do. That fucking, you cannot tell a native woman what to do, especially as a white man. I will not take it. And then you said it wasn't a race issue. Oh, it's been a race issue, and it is a race issue. And if you want to be an ally, but honestly, at this point, I think you're just a fake ally. The truth is coming out about you. And I unblocked you so you could see this. I seen that video too that Ash put up about you. It's all true. You need to listen to people of color when we're telling you stuff because it's all true. Fake ally.
At one point, in the midst of all the stuff going on within the Indigenous space, Aric did attempt to apologize while not really offering much remorse and accountability and not understanding the gravity of his actions, and continued the drama within the space. You can watch the dates as this moves forward.
Ever since this whole Modern Warrior and Chelsea thing, it's like TikTok has just become this very, very heavy and very, very emotionally high app, and everybody's it's just spilling all over. I also want to say to everybody in here right now that I am sorry for my actions and behaviors that I've exuded on TikTok. No matter what I seem to do, no matter how I seem to approach this, no matter what I seem to say, no matter how I try and hold myself accountable, I'm getting ridiculed. Yeah, I don't know what to do at this point. But I just want you all to know that I love you, and I'm just going to try and do my best to not entertain the toxicity and try and move forward. I'm still going to make a 7 teachings post that I'm going to try and follow through with as well. Not try, I'm definitely going to honor them. But yeah.
Are you okay? Like really? I'm fine. If I'ma be sad, I'ma do it with pizzazz. And shake these feelings off my ass. Then find me in some glitter if I crash. Do it with pizzazz. Cause if the feeling never passed, then at least I flip the shit into some cash. Do it with pizzazz. Every hour spent in isolation makes it easier to face annihilation. I'ma do it with pizzazz. Either you gon' shake or be shaking, and I just ain't the type to keep waiting. Do it with pizzazz.
This comment really annoys me, and some of those people shouldn't have added on to the hate and hurt I kept receiving either. You know what? I didn't say anything publicly until you posted this video. This whole experience taught me one thing. People will just easily abandon you as they support you. I didn't say a fucking thing publicly because I told you I wouldn't. But this shit, this whole, oh, boo-hoo, poor me, like, motherfucker, I have cut off family members, people I've known for 20-something years, people who are my fucking family, people I've known forever. I knew you for 1 month. I don't owe you shit. And especially if you built our friendship on lies, on deception, and on dishonesty. And that's what you fucking did. And you expect us to be fucking loyal to you? And then you want to play victim on here? See, this was the first time I publicly called you out. And it was after your whole video. And obviously it is, because I said this whole experience taught me one thing. Don't ever take someone's word for it, because we asked you numerous times, is there things we don't know? And you said, yes, no, there's nothing you don't know, nothing, blah, 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 blah. You know how many fucking people came to me after I stopped having a friendship with you and told me their side of things and how fucking betrayed I felt? You're crying about your trauma. Like, what about my trauma? What about every other person's trauma who was close with you? And then you make this fucking video apologizing to who? You didn't apologize to me privately, and then you want to act like a fucking victim on the internet. This shit. Not a single person has said the world would be a better place without you. Not a single fucking one. You know what? I don't think you have a fucking right to be standing up here calling yourself an ally or an advocate for our people when you have hurt people who are part of the BIPOC community. You want to cry about your trauma, motherfucker? What about my trauma from generational fucking trauma? You know that? Like, I'm a fucking orphan. I am a single mother. I am a teen mother. But you don't see me out here crying and using it as an excuse to hurt people. And that's all you do. You can't tell us you apologize and then follow it with a fucking excuse every time. That's not an apology. You need to fucking do better, and I'm sick of this shit. See? Here's me commenting. And you know, maybe I didn't do it in the best way, but I hope that this would have like gave you a chance to actually apologize to me directly, but you didn't. And there was multiple other people who did the same, but you just blocked and deleted them. Here I even said I'm more hurt than angry because I trusted you. And I said, if you were honest from the get-go, I wouldn't have left, but you weren't. Because I appreciate honesty. Even if it was bad and you did bad shit, I would have appreciated that. But I'm sick of this, and I know there's people who follow you and follow me, but I'm done. I'm done with you playing victim, and I'm done with this shit. And I'm personally calling you out, Aric. Here I am saying your fucking name.
Aric's poor behavior and his disrespect for the women within the Indigenous community went so far that one of the elders of the community had to come forward to ask Aric to stop. I mean, a grown man doesn't know what a boundary is, but yet he talks about them on his page.
Greetings and blessings. I would like to address a situation, and I want to address to Aric. You made several videos about my niece, and I'm asking you politely, please stop. She already asked you before to stop making videos. We as Native Americans honor and respect our life givers, our women. Whether you see them as right or wrong, or however you see their portray themselves, is not for you to judge. Please respect my wishes. Respect hers. If you have any understanding about our native teachings and about our life givers, that they are to be held in honor and respect. And if there's a situation that needs to be addressed, then it will be done properly. But if she's telling you to stop, please listen to her. I have no more to say after this about the situation. So I ask that you would please honor her wishes and mine. And in doing so, you will honor our traditions. You will honor our native community. Aho matakamiasi, blessings.
As you can see, the drama surrounding Aric and these women within the Indigenous space started in March of 2022 and finally came to its close in September of 2022 when that elder tagged him and called him out. At that point, that is when Aric deactivated that account. And it wasn't but a month and a half later, in October of 2023, that Aric all of a sudden popped back up on a brand new account as a men's advocate or as an MRA. Aric Jaay has been chasing internet clout for years and years, back to I think it was 2013 or 14 or 15. He has been going from cause to cause, advocating as these allies within this space. And when something goes wrong, he just walks away and moves on to the next cause that might accept him. When Lola first started advocating, she quickly came into the space and was very quickly taken under the wing of Aric Jaay. And a lot of us really enjoyed Lola's live. She had amazing content. She was doing great things within the space. She was having really provocative conversations, but there seemed to be a shift. And some of us noticed that sometimes Lola's actions on the screen were not appropriate. She would laugh at awkward times. She would appear to not be paying attention. Aric would be sitting up in his box watching TV or playing Xbox as a man was sitting there playing or telling his story and talking about his trauma. But one of the things that got us all was why was Lola smiling when a man was telling his trauma? Why was Lola acting weird or not paying any attention? Why was she typing on the screen? Let's let Lola tell you.
Ended up being freaked out by, which, because I didn't think about this when I went into this world, that I've never been a public, something that publicly is viewed before. Mm-hmm. And when I was doing live streams, especially the long ones, there were alters that don't fucking care about men's rights at
Mhm.
all, coming in being like, "The hell am I doing here?" And I started seeing, for example, Cassie micro-analyzing my behaviors, and that started freaking me out a lot because I didn't want anyone to figure out that I had DID, but at the same time, I was like, if I told them I had DID, they probably wouldn't be sitting here scrutinizing things that they thought were me being manipulative, when in actuality, it was me becoming suddenly conscious that I was on a live stream with 50 people, and I had no idea how I got there, and I was smiling because I was uncomfortable.
DID gave a very big explanation to a lot of us as to what was occurring. And that's why she always made sure she had really good moderators on the screen. Aric being one of those. But how was Aric a good moderator when he was watching TV or playing Xbox as things were going on in the live and he would just occasionally insert himself? Aric was in almost every single one of her lives. Aric was aware of her DID. Aric was having conversations not only with Christina, but also with her alters, which gave him the ability to manipulate her system because it gave him the ability to turn alters against Josh and create himself as this savior of Lola. And she fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. He used her mental health against her. I think you'll notice throughout this that I go between calling her Christina and Lola. And the reason why is her screen name was Lola, but Lola happens to be one of her alters. And she used that screen name because it's an alter that she's a fan of. But the problem is that also brought that alter out when really who she wanted forward on social media was herself, Christina. And so as a person that has known her for Lola for a long time, it's really hard to remember that I need to call her Christina now. Truly, where did all the drama and upheaval start? And again, I'm going to say it wasn't drama. These were our lives and they were impacted in big world ways by what had gone on here. And we'll get into that later. But it was a Tuesday. Michelle, Reclaiming Your Voice, had recently gone through a rather traumatic event. Her PTSD was triggered. She had anxiety and her insomnia was through the roof. She wasn't sleeping. She had been on live a lot over the course of a couple days. Aric and Lola, or Christina, painted it as if she had been on live for 36 hours straight. And at one point, it went up to 48 hours in one of these lives one night. But she hadn't been on live for that long straight. I can confirm and verify that because I had spoken to her on the phone in these times. I had messaged with her privately in these times. And Michelle doesn't have the technology to be messaging privately and taking phone calls while on a live. So on this Tuesday morning in June, Lola and Aric popped into Reclaiming Your Voices live because they thought she had been live for 36 hours straight. And they came in and they told her that it wasn't right what was going on. Things were not cool. She wasn't taking care of herself. She wasn't taking care of her mental health. She needed to get some sleep. She needed to get off live. Michelle felt like they were treating her like a child. She was embarrassed that they were talking to her the way they were. And she was embarrassed that they were doing it in front of an audience of men that she was there to hold space for. She got mad and she got frustrated and she kicked out of the live instantly. Within a few minutes, Aric had sent me a message. I told him not to worry. Michelle was a really good friend of mine. I would take care of it. I would get in contact with her. The narrative was that maybe she needed a wellness check, which I knew that that was not what Michelle needed. But as soon as I sent Michelle a message and was waiting for her reply, I popped back onto TikTok to see that Aric, as well as a few other MRAs, were sitting on a public live discussing Michelle's mental health, discussing what had happened, discussing her mental health. Who the fuck goes on the live publicly and discusses another advocate's mental health? I don't care if you're concerned. A live is not the platform for it. And I let them know that. And I was very upset. And I yelled at them in the midst of that. And then I got off that live and I went to go try to contact my friend again until I heard from her and found out she was safe. And she was safe. I mean, she was triggered from her PTSD. This made her feel embarrassed. It made her feel like they treated her like a child. And she was upset, and as well she should have been. I relayed that message to Aric. He responded to me and basically told me I wasn't holding Michelle accountable and that I had bias towards my friend that was allowing some of this behavior. He didn't morally and ethically align with me or Michelle anymore, and he would be disengaging from us. That day, Aric Jaay unfollowed us.
No, what ended up happening, Michelle, just to give you a heads up, was when me and Lola approached you about your 48-hour live stream and we actually expressed genuine concern for you, you decided to take that as an attack from us, and then it turned into this whole dramatic fest, and then that's when I decided to step away from you and Tammy.
Writing about my mental health and saying I was having a mental breakdown and that I needed a welfare check called on me.
So he wanted me to hold my friend accountable because she had insomnia and wasn't sleeping. So she was doing lives to hold space for men and help men, because that's one of her coping mechanisms, is to keep her brain busy. It keeps her brain busy by helping other people. What a horrible thing to turn to. You know, some people turn addiction to another addiction. Some people turn trauma to addiction. Michelle took her trauma and addiction and turned it into advocacy for men and holding space for men. And I was supposed to hold her accountable for it. I was as fucking confused by that as everybody else was. And so was Michelle. We were very confused. But just silently walking away from us wasn't enough for Aric Jaay. He had to be performative and post a video on his page about how he no longer morally and ethically aligned with some creators and how it had become apparent that he should no longer engage with them. So he was going through the people that he followed and unfollowing people, because that needed to be an announcement. He needed to perform that to the world.
What's up, TikTok? So currently at work, just, in the back office, chilling out, taking a little break. I wanted to make this video because over the next hour or so, I'm going to be really going through my following list and making sure that the people that I follow are people that align with my own morals, what I support, and what I truly believe in. Because as somebody like myself who has been a part of the MRA community for a little bit now, I've actually built up somewhat of a decent reputation for myself. And no, that's not me tooting my own horn, it's me being recognized for somebody that people can actually support. With this in mind, folks, I think it's very important for me to follow and support people that I genuinely know won't make me look potentially like a bad advocate. In most cases, unfortunately, I can't really support certain people's ideologies. As somebody like myself who has learned to approach conversations with critical thinking skills and discernment, people's biases have shown themselves a lot in these discussions, and I don't think I can follow a lot of people, unfortunately. When it comes to advocacy, I think it's very important for me, as well as I'm sure many others, to make sure that the people that are in their circle align with me. Disengaging from you doesn't mean that I think you're a bad person. It just means that I don't think our beliefs or what we advocate for or what we talk about really align. I'm also just going to add into that I do not owe you an explanation if I choose to remove you, so please don't take offense to it. I just felt like this is a needed step that needed to be. People's biases have shown themselves a lot in these discussions.
Between Lola's on-screen reactions that we now know is associated with her DID, and she was doing absolutely nothing wrong, and Aric Jaay sitting behind the screen watching TV and playing video games and not even tuned into the live half the time, it made me and Michelle and other people within the space concerned for vulnerable men within the space. And yeah, I'll admit it. I sent that message to a few people and said, you might want to just watch yourself in Lola and Aric's space, because I'm concerned about vulnerable men. We had had some men that really felt as if they were dismissed within that space and felt that if their mental health was not being helped in any way, shape, or form, and we were able to help them. I also shared some of the weird stuff that was going on with the Aric and Lola stuff, because I had two sides. One, I didn't know whether to be concerned for my friend Aric, because I was like, well, maybe he's being manipulated. But then I was concerned for Josh because maybe he was being manipulated. And then I was concerned for Lola because maybe both of these men were manipulated. I didn't know what was going on. But I know that I was concerned, and I know that I thought that Aric had changed drastically. And I honestly, at that point in time, thought it was Lola's fault, thought it was Christina's fault. I now realize that it was just his mask slipping. A few days after Aric unfollowed us, Lola sent myself, Reclaiming Your Voice, and Tazzy messages that we had been talking about her and Aric behind their backs, and that we had been talking about their relationship and spreading false information. And I actually responded, and I think Michelle and Tazzy responded and said, well, who's saying this to you? And provide me the proof that it's being said, because I want to go talk to those people, but I'm willing to have a conversation with you. And at that point in time, Christina blocked us. Within a few days, Aric was posting video upon video about bad advocates and what to look for in bad advocates. And he was breadcrumbing information about Michelle, myself, and Tazzy, painting us as bad advocates in the space. And in the comment section, when people were saying, we need to know who these people are, he was saying, DM me. And he was telling people our names. But it wasn't just myself, Michelle, and Tazzy that were blocked by Aric and Lola. It was M. Painter and Marco and Saturn Sun and Cassie and Norse, Brian Carlson, Rocco. The list goes on and on and on, I think. I don't know. But it was a big list.
Don't gaslight me.
This is not gaslighting. This is holding you
It
accountable.
absolutely is. When did you stand on this moral high horse?
I've been on my moral high horse ever since I've been in this community for the past 2.5 years on TikTok.
Say that I was a good advocate. You
Until I
used
started
to say
paying
I was
attention to your behavior.
No.
So a lot of us were really upset about this and really concerned. Like, why were so many MRAs being blocked from this space? What was going on over there? And why did they feel like they had the moral superiority to decide who could advocate, who was good advocates, and who deserved to be in this space? We had a right to be mad and we had a right to discuss it. And that's all we were doing. And most of it was happening behind closed doors. There are a few things that cropped up in lives when people asked questions, but it wasn't a smear campaign as they painted it to be. But I honestly thought the block list had stopped at like Michelle, myself, Cass, Tazzy, some of the other people involved. But then it, as you saw, it moved to Brian and Bad Yogi. But then there's Aric recommending blocking anybody associated with like Michelle or Tazzy's lives, like Roscoe, people that had absolutely nothing to do with this drama, people that did nothing to support this drama, people that actually tried to somewhat stand in the middle and mediate some of this. But yet they were just deeming, block them if they associate with us, because if you associate with me or Michelle or Tazzy, you must be a horrible person.
All right, TikTok. I just want to talk about something super quick. It seems to me lately in the advocacy realm of TikTok that a lot of people are kind of taking a backseat to doing actual advocacy, and they're focusing on these weird parasocial relationships between each other. It's getting so bad that these people are involving themselves in people's personal lives and talking about them to others and gossiping in a weird way, when in reality we're all adults, right? So we should be able to talk about these issues face to face instead of kind of creating like this weird divide in the advocacy field. Like, this isn't high school. We shouldn't be messaging people to get their side or get on my side or support me and don't support this person. Like, Jesus Christ. And I'm gonna tell you all right now that I have respectfully disengaged from several content creators, and I've let them know that I was doing that. And I never posted about them. I never mentioned it. I never said anything to anybody else. I never went out of my way to message people directly and be like, so I just want to let you know that all of this is happening and I don't agree with this person anymore, because I'm an adult. Adults are allowed to disagree with one another without going to other adults and saying, hey, because something that I've learned over the course of being in the MRA space for the last, 2 years is that it can get pretty toxic, unfortunately. There's a lot of people that want to hold accountability to other people, but they have rose-colored glasses of their own friends, supporters, or followers that they will enable and make excuses for their behavior instead of actually holding them accountable. The person that you're talking about is actually causing harm within the community that you're in, or causing harm to men or women or otherwise, and is actively partaking that behavior, you shouldn't be talking about that person. Personally, I think if a lot of individuals took their ego out of this conversation and really just kind of did some self-reflection, they would understand that what they're doing is actually contributing to harm. Anyway, folks, when we know better, we do better. So here's hoping that we all do.
Screenshot is in reference to the last few women, Big Mac and Indigo, deciding to block Lola and her feeling betrayed. But what I want to point out is how easily Aric throws around the word abuse. We were all abusers. These women were abusers. It was psychological abuse. None of us were abusing anybody. We were all concerned about the men's advocacy space and what was being done to the individuals within the space. Honestly, I've said it before, I'll say it again. We really thought it was Lola, but these are showing that it's Aric. I mean, he's painted Josh as an abuser. All of us are apparently abusers. I think everybody in the world's abusers, except for Aric. because he sees it in everybody else because it's what exists within himself. And of course, as everybody was blocking each other and everything, those that had been blocked by Lola and Aric or chose to block Lola and Aric found each other because we were all friends to begin with. We all talked to begin with. Why would we not talk now that we've been ousted from their space? But what I find interesting is Aric actually tells on himself when he says that we're all going to trauma bond over some toxic situation. We would have no reason to have any form of trauma if you hadn't done anything wrong. So is he admitting that he knows that he was causing trauma in people? Because I think he is. But what I find disgusting is he says that Michelle and I are going to take advantage of it. We're going to use it to our own advantage, what they've been through. Really, Aric? Really? A lot of us really thought that this was Christina. We thought she was the problem. We thought she was the one that was doing this. But we quickly became aware that it wasn't Christina, that it was Aric. Because once we had him in a public live, we were able to see who he really was, how dismissive he was, how angry he was, his inability to take accountability for anything that he was doing and how he was making people feel.
You went through.
Josh has already told you that. So you're spinning a narrative. You're
Aric,
spinning a narrative, brother.
Aric,
You're spinning a narrative.
Don't call me fucking brother. Don't call me fucking brother.
You're spinning
Don't call me
narrative.
fucking.
Hey,
Don't call me fucking brother and stop fucking interrupting me.
Go talk to Josh. Go talk to Josh.
I will talk to Josh.
And he will say that
I'll
they
talk
were
to
never
Josh.
married. They will say that he was never married. Go talk to him right now.
Okay, that's fine. It doesn't matter. I don't give
It
a
does
crap.
Marco, apparently.
I don't care about your relationship. What I care about is this cause and these men. And what you are saying about them is absolutely harmful. They're
It's
not
harmful.
abusive.
They are
And
abusive.
the fact that he said that he got in his feels, he was allowed to feel hurt. Men are allowed to feel hurt.
So you're
They're
going to
allowed to have
their
an
behaviors
opinion.
because they're traumatized. Gotcha.
You really are a pathological psychopath, aren't you?
Oh, that's a good exit.
You really
I like you,
don't
Marco.
actually
I appreciate
understand what's
you.
being said. You actually
No.
really don't understand what's
I
being
do.
said.
I do. You just don't
No,
like to be
you
held
don't.
accountable. It's
No,
okay,
you
Marco.
don't.
I
You
got
want
you,
me to
brother.
be accountable?
I got you.
You want me to?
Why?
What do you say?
Okay. Why? Hold on. Why do we have to be held accountable for wanting to advocate?
Because if you are sitting there and you are trying to sit here and advocate and make the betterment of men, you should also hold them accountable for their toxic behaviors. That is point blank, period.
What Lola perceived as a toxic behavior.
What?
He became this white knight attack dog for Christina. And a lot of times she was quiet within this. She didn't say a lot. She occasionally tried to defend herself, but she wasn't screaming and yelling and dismissing people and fighting with us. One of the things that happened in the midst of this is it became very aware to a bunch of us that Aric, Jaay, and Lola had connected themselves with a very radical feminist on this app, a feminist that has a history with myself, with Reclaiming Your Voice, with Matchuli, with Fanny, a feminist that has done some smear campaigns on us and doxed my legal name, the city I live in, did the same thing to Matchuli. But they had also connected themselves with ex-patriarch and were in communication with ex-patriarch, a male feminist that has gone hard for Fanny Adams and attempted to destroy her reputation, gone hard for Matchuli and attempted to destroy his reputation, gone hard for many men in the men's advocacy space as he white knights for the feminist movement. And as you can see by the message that Aric sent to Brent, ex-patriarch, that he knew that there were places that they disagreed, that Aric still intended to advocate for men, but bring some of Brent's content over, and that he would follow him. And maybe they could have debate talk type live discussions. So, ex-patriarch, a male feminist that has gone after multiple people in the space, and Aric's just willingly going to kumbaya with him and start bringing his content over into the men's advocacy space. This particular feminist that he connected himself with is connected to somebody else. And he's connected to a woman that in the past called the cops to my home, a woman that put my safety at risk, a woman that made it so that children on my street were not allowed to play with my son because I was the single mom with the cops showing up at her house. The person that's associated with this also called a wellness check-in on Reclaiming Your Voice that wasn't warranted and wasn't needed. She doxed a domestic violence survivor's address in a comment section. A lot of stuff has been done by this particular person, and all of it happened in 2022. But we also became aware that Aric Jaay was in communication with her. And that made myself and Reclaiming Your Voice fearful. This made us all really concerned. And there were a lot of people mad about the back and forth in the space, but a lot of us weren't talking about it. And then on July 4th, Reclaiming Your Voice was celebrating 7 years of sobriety and was hosting a celebratory live. And Aric Jaay came into that live. And his behavior within that live that night was some of the most disgusting stuff I've seen.
At the end of the day, something that I have learned from this community, which is not really a community of MRAs, it's just a bunch of echo chambered people who are just, feeding into their own traumas, is you aren't holding yourselves accountable. You're not doing the healing and the real work to be an actual MRA, because if you actually were an MRA, you would actually question people like Marco and Norse and other people who have trauma, then also offer opportunity for them to grow and heal, because real advocacy is actually allowing opportunities to heal and grow, not continuously live in their trauma, not continuously live in through the experiences that they continue to talk about. And this is the reason why they are the way they are. The reason why I say none of you are advocates is because you are self-serving. That is point blank, period. And this is something that I have learned over the last 6 months very closely. And the only reason why I've learned this even more so is because I cordially and respectfully stepped away from you and Tammy. I didn't make a post about it. I didn't say shit about it. Then all of a sudden, everybody in the other side of the panel decided to talk about me, tried to talk about Lola, tried to talk about what was going on with our relationship, tried to attack her and make her sound like she was a terrible person, pulling me away from the community, when in reality, your behaviors and everybody's behaviors have made me step away.
And in that live that night, I was in the comment section. I said to Aric that he had potentially put me in danger. And he laughed. LAMO or whatever it is. And then I said, you don't understand. Like, I feel really unsafe. And his response was to tell me to get the fuck off of TikTok. He could have cared less that I was scared. This triggered Michelle and I's PTSD in a way that I don't even know. We weren't sleeping. We weren't eating. I spent an entire night throwing up. I was afraid to leave my home. Like, when you go back to those moments that happened years ago, it triggered something in me that made me not okay. Aric said that Michelle's lives were not helpful, that she was holding men in their trauma by allowing them to tell their stories repeatedly.
I want to know why you felt it appropriate to tell a man who was defending me and who said I had made his life better that I was nothing more than a manipulator, a fake, and a grifter.
Because that is literally the behaviors you've shown me in the last couple of months. You enable people's trauma.
Because
you literally hold up. If you're sitting here saying how, hold on.
In my bio.
No, that's not why. The fact of the matter is, I've seen you host lives, and it's the exact same lives that you host all the time. You allow men to come and trauma dump. You allow them to tell their stories, which is great.
I let them tell their stories. That's trauma dumping, Aric.
It is. If it's the exact same conversations with the exact same people all the time, it is trauma dumping, repeated trauma dumping. I'm coming from a place where I've healed from my trauma. I know exactly what it is.
If you understand the early parts of healing, people will tell their stories over
why
and
do you
over.
Have Michelle's Army in your thing? Why do you have a hashtag Michelle's Army? If you're about advocacy, why are you trying to like recruit people if you're really about advocacy? What's the whole Michelle's Army hashtag?
I don't think Aric understands that some people need to tell their story over and over again to heal. But he dismissed a lot of men that night, because there are men, and a lot of domestic violence survivors, because there are many people that tell their story over and over again, not because they're unhealed, not because it's holding them in their trauma. It's because it gives them power to let their abusers know that they are no longer afraid, and they will speak out and they will speak publicly.
Hey, manicured mom, just so you're aware, men telling their stories, because I've told my story plenty of times, but if you're continuously telling your story and trauma dumping into groups of people that you don't really know very well, it is technically a version of trauma dumping, because that is
it's not, Aric.
It is, unfortunately.
No, if you understand anything about domestic violence, when you are told you don't matter, when you are told you are lying, when you are told and being constantly told that it didn't happen, yeah, you tell this story over and over and over again because you want people to hear you, because you are, like my name says, you're reclaiming your voice. That's what I'm letting this community do. They're reclaiming their voice. And you call it trauma dumping. When I've seen you and Lola, when men have told their stories, roll your eyes, laugh back and forth.
That's not what we're doing, actually.
Yeah, you're sending messages back and forth and then laughing.
Literally about nothing in regards to the live discussion at hand. We were
But a man is telling you his trauma and he sees you laughing.
Exactly. We weren't. That's not what happened. You were there one time and you noticed that and you made one comment and you act like it's all the time. Please.
No, I've had quite a few men come to me and say, I don't feel comfortable sharing my trauma over there because
That's interesting because I have men every single day reach out to me and tell me that because of me, they haven't ended up taking their own life. So
I'm glad for that, Aric. And no one's trying to stop you from being in your space. The difference is you're trying to stop other people from being in this space. There are men that tell that to me and Tammy too.
I mean, when you have somebody like Brian call you out, you had Brian call you out and Tammy call you out over a year. You literally had Brian call you and Tammy out over a year ago, yet y'all still show space for that. Brian literally called you out.
We put our personal shit aside for the betterment of men.
Okay.
You should try it sometime.
Oh, I do, but I don't align
because my personal issues with people are not as important as my purpose.
Okay. Interesting.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I love how every time somebody says something that gets you, you say interesting.
I'm going to go through some of the things that occurred in some of these lives, but I'll also below the video leave links to these lives so that you are able to actually watch them for yourself, see his behavior, see his reactions to other people, and see how he truly treated and dismissed the concerns, the fears, and the emotions and the mental health of many fellow advocates within this space. After the 4th of July live, there was a lot of people that didn't get to have their say during that live. They didn't get to give their piece. They didn't get to talk about it because there were so many people in there with so many things that needed to be said. And Aric was taking over it and yelling at people and dismissing everybody. And so afterwards, Tazzy and Warrior went live and they had discussions. And was some of it appropriate? No. And Tazzy has taken accountability for that. At one point in time, she made jokes about his receding hairline. Was that right? No. Does Tazzy know that wasn't right? She does. Did she take accountability for that? Yes. And you know what? She actually did it in a video on her page. She's since removed it after Eric's displayed even worse behavior to her, but she did take accountability to it for it. But one of the things that Aric did later during this was made an effort to paint Tazzy as if she was violent and that she threatened violence upon him. She at no point threatened violence upon him. What she said was that she wanted to speak to him. I'll let you see what she said in that live.
Tongue is because I've been speaking shall, but if that had happened on my life, let me tell you something.
If that had happened here, I wouldn't have bit my tongue. I would have just gone off and...
No, the thing is, in that moment, I've been late. Just give me like 5 minutes with him. Just 5 minutes with him.
Hey, Ledge, what's up, buddy?
What? A narcissist, a psychological abuser, a gaslighter, a manipulator.
This was a live she had after the live on 4th of July in which Aric came in was deplorable to everybody. And her words are saying she wants 5 minutes to talk to him. She didn't say the things that she wanted to say to him because it was Michelle's live and she respected Michelle's platform. She wanted 5 minutes to talk to him, not 5 minutes to beat the crap out of him. But he painted it to the world that she was threatening violence upon him, a man that had been a victim of domestic violence, as if to paint himself as this victim in this situation a situation that he had deplorable action that put myself and Reclaiming Your Voice safety at risk, and then dismissed it and laughed at us. But we are the problem. There's another live in which Michelle and Tazzy and a bunch of MRAs, I think M. Painter was in there, Marco was in there. I don't even remember who all was in there. And a lot of the discussion was about potential ways to unite the MRA space, maybe a video duet chain, something along that lines. And at the same time, Michelle also standing there very openly questioning whether or not she wanted to maintain her advocacy within the space because of what was happening, because of all this drama, because of the PTSD that had been triggered by these unsafe people being brought into our space by Aric. During that live, Aric, of course, showed up as he always does. The second he thinks anybody might be talking negatively about him, he's got to come in and fight the fight and be in the middle of it. And his actions again were displayed, and his actions again were quite terrible. And in the midst of that, he triggered multiple people and thought nothing of it. Aric spoke over and laughed at a man named Ice Bear. Ice Bear is a bisexual man that struggles with his mental health and healing from abuse that has happened to him within his life. And Aric spoke over him and triggered him. And Ice Bear had a panic attack. And when he did, he started yelling at Aric. And Aric laughed at him and then had the audacity to sit on a live and tell people that people were responsible for their own traumas and triggers and it wasn't his fault.
Ice Bear, you okay?
No, this man has caused me to have a panic attack.
Oh my lord.
You see what he does? Do you see?
So why am I being held accountable for somebody else's triggers, traumas, and healing responses?
Actually, I spare
Why am I being held accountable for somebody else not being able to handle their own traumas and triggers?
You're an MRE, that's why
No, respectfully, why am I being held accountable for somebody else's behavior?
One thing I'm not going to do is have someone on my panel that when they trigger someone, belittle it. That is not okay. I'm not looking at this from a rational perspective or anything. You see, he thinks it's funny.
Yes, we are responsible for our own traumas and triggers to an extent. But as human beings, when you do something to trigger someone's trauma, you need to be accountable for it and not laugh about it as if it wasn't a big deal. So in the midst of this, Aric and Lola hosted a live. And on that live, they platformed a bunch of people. People that Christina, Lola, would have had no idea who these people are. She hasn't been in this space for very long. But they were able to bring in a feminist from the past. They brought in Anne Pink-Haired Mama. Anne Pink-Haired Mama is one of the people that launched the smear campaign against Dan HFC.
Feel. So goodbye, my friend. I know I'll never see you again, but the time together through all the years will take away these tears. It's okay now. Goodbye, my friend.
strange how the little things that everyone else takes for granted, that it's no big deal for them, are huge things for us that are really difficult for us. And people look at you strange when you explain to them, and they look, what? They look like you look at you like you're crazy. But we're not crazy. We're just healing from trauma.
She's one of the individuals that led to his mental health decline. Ultimately, in February of 2024, Dan took his life. Did he do it because of that smear campaign? Not 100%. Did that contribute to his mental health decline? He absolutely did.
Eyes will stand by the flash of a neon light.
So, Pink-Haired Mama, I have a question for you. You're one of the first people in that video with the hashtag #MeToo. basically which means you were sexually assaulted or sexually harassed by Dan HFC. And if that's the case, and you posted that video and it's been up on your page for a year now, which makes people believe that you're a victim of Dan. If that's the case, why did you post this comment saying you were never abused by him? A false allegation, possibly? An attempt to destroy a man's life? Because of some flirting that maybe went too far? Because you wanted to make an impact and you wanted the world to go against Dan? But you were never abused by him. But yet you hashtagged Me Too with his name. Aric knew the history with Pink Haired Mama. Aric knew the history with this particular feminist that they were platforming. And I'm leaving her name out of this specifically because myself and her actually came to a truce a long time ago. And my name was not involved with her whatsoever until Aric unearthed her again and started having communication with her. This feminist wasn't initially communicating with Aric because she had seen some of Eric's behavior and saw some of his behind the mask of who he was, and she actually had knowledge and knew of some of what had happened within the indigenous feminist space that Aric used to exist in. She reached out to Lola out of concern for Lola. Her intention was never to come against Michelle and I. We didn't take it that way. We felt it very threatening that she was in our space. We felt it very threatening that a radical feminist was being platformed by an MRA within an MRA space where there were vulnerable men. They also platformed Rachel DePalma within that live. Rachel DePalma is not only the woman that filed a false restraining order against me full of false allegations, which I have spoken about publicly on the app. A temporary restraining order was granted based on the evidence she initially submitted to the court in August of 2023. And in May of 2024, the restraining order was denied and she was deemed not credible and not reasonable. And that was the reason for the denial. Not only did Aric know about that, but he was given the opportunity to read my declaration that I wrote about what this woman had done to me and what she put it through. And he went as far as telling Christina that he didn't believe me and that I was lying in some of this. My declaration and what I put forward was done under penalty of perjury, and it was provided to the court with, I believe, almost 100 exhibits to support my side and get that restraining order denied. 6 days after its denial, Ms. DePalma filed another restraining order against me. The temporary was instantly denied. What makes it worse is not only did he platform her against me, but this woman, this Rachel DePalma, is a real-life Amber Heard. She attempted to file abuse charges against her ex. She claimed that he abused her, and I think she may have claimed that he raped her, but I honestly don't know. But no charges were officially pressed against him, and he was never arrested. She proceeded to write a book about him, trash his name across social media, destroy his reputation, and ultimately, this man filed a defamation suit against her. They fought it out in court for quite a while, back and forth, and it ended up in a settlement agreement. Within that settlement agreement, she paid him $75,000 and had to put a disclaimer anytime she came on social media and said that she was a victim of narcissistic abuse, sexual abuse, or any form of abuse, basically domestic violence. So she took it a step further, didn't follow the rules, and in September of 23, they ended up in court in a settlement enforcement in which she lost and was required to remove a whole bunch of content, fix a whole bunch of content, pay him $41,000. But she didn't listen then. She didn't remove the content and she didn't pay him the money. So he filed for sanctions, which were granted against her. She owed him more money. She still didn't pay him the money and remove the content. So he filed for a lien on her property, which was granted, as well as for contempt of court. Ultimately, she removed the content and paid him the money. So she didn't get the contempt of court charge. She's a real life Amber Heard. In my opinion, she falsely accused this man and has been destroying his life since 2020. She also filed another domestic violence restraining order against him, which she recently dismissed. In the midst of doing that to me, she filed a federal defamation case against 3 other TikTokers, which she lost in a court of law. And she filed another restraining order against another domestic abuse or narcissistic abuse survivor on this app, which then she dismissed within days after mine was being dismissed because evidence that was also used against this woman was deemed not credible when she tried to use it against me. Aric Jaay knows about this woman's history, and he platformed her within this space. Now, everything I say about her is my personal opinion because I've read court documents, but he platformed somebody that falsely accused two people, in my opinion. During this, he said that he wasn't bringing them into an MRA space because he no longer identified as an MRA, but he would continue to advocate for men. Regardless of whether or not he took the moniker off of his page, he built his page as an MRA with men that followed him because of that content. And he was platforming false accusers and toxic feminists that had come after the men's space. And that didn't seem to be a problem with anybody. And yet, Michelle and I, just wanting to defend ourselves and be concerned for our safety, seemed to have been painted as the problem. And we were told that we were going to be blocked by a whole bunch of people. And maybe, just maybe, we would get on block someday. There were multiple lives back and forth between everybody. But in the middle of this, I was not really making content other than to say there was drama in the space and that we needed to get back to advocating because men were suffering. I mean, I made one dig at Aric one day because I was super pissed about something he said in the video, but we weren't really going back and forth. But for some reason, Michelle and I were scapegoated and painted as the problem in this. I received messages from people telling me my behavior was deplorable, talking about evidence they had against me and all of this other stuff that I don't even think exists, stuff that I can probably disprove in one way, shape, or form. And if I did something that was fuck shit crazy, well, you know what? I'll take accountability. Michelle will take accountability. We are not perfect. We don't claim to be perfect. But for some reason, it was deemed that we were the problem. We were the ones perpetuating the drama, but this wasn't drama. Aric was bringing an unsafe person into our space. He was bringing unsafe individuals and platforming them into the MRA space. After all the back and forth, Indigo hosted a live to bring us all together to talk about this. Everybody was given a chance to speak. There were very strict rules. She did a really good job of monitoring the live and making sure everybody followed the rules. Nobody could talk over each other. Nobody could call names or swear at each other. A lot of things were solved that night. A lot of people in that live apologized, took accountability. As the live came to an end, it was agreed that every single one of us would walk away and we would no longer talk about the situation. Everybody was going to take down their content and get back to advocacy. Everybody except for Aric Jaay. Aric Jaay felt like he was allowed to leave his content up because it was only his opinions and he was entitled to his opinions, even though his opinions were causing harm to myself, Michelle, Tazzy, and others within the space. We were all trying to do what was in the best interest of men's advocacy, but Aric was trying to do what was in the best interest of himself. Within Indigo's live, I was given an opportunity to directly address Aric about how he laughed when I told him I didn't feel safe and how he told me to get the fuck off of TikTok. He didn't so much as address it. He really kind of skirted over it as if, well, I didn't put you at risk. No, sir, you brought the person back into the space that is putting me at risk. So you do have some responsibility, but you also laughed at my trauma and you didn't take accountability for it.
That. So I instantly don't feel safe when she is brought into this space because I know what she did to my life. And I know that there was a point where I thought I was going to lose custody of my son. And that was brought into my space. And the person that called the cops has not mentioned my name in years. And the day after you connected with her, my name was coming out of that woman's mouth in Eve's comment section. The person that is responsible for me almost losing custody of my son. And you sat in that fucking live and you laughed at me as if this was a fucking joke.
I want to say that, yeah, okay, maybe I spoke out of context saying Lamau about you feeling unsafe, but I personally, me personally, I have not done anything directly to you to elicit any sort of harm. My conversation with Eve that I had, I mentioned to you that there was conversations that she brought up, that she brought evidence of you and Michelle and other people that are also a part of this. And I said, if this attack continues to continue to harm my partner's behavior, like my partner's mental health, and she can't do her thing, like she's literally been in panic mode to the point where she has deactivated her account, where she feels unsafe, where you are platforming people who have made her feel unsafe, but yet I'm the one that's being scapegoated right now, that's being ostracized for defending somebody I care about. And when I'm sitting here saying I have no problem creating platforms or playlists, highlighting hypocrisy within the MRA community, because let's be realistic, there's rad feminists and rad MRAs. That there's no in between with that, and there are certain behaviors within the community that made me step away from the community before even Lola was involved. When it comes down to it, I was already stepping away. I messaged you privately in a respectful manner because we've been mutuals. I didn't agree with certain morality stances. That is how it started. So I'll be the first to admit that I apologize for making it feel like I laughed at the fact that you're scared, but I didn't personally do anything to elicit that I would give any sort of information other than basically telling you that I was given evidence to use if you continue to make my partner feel unsafe.
Aric instantly left that live. The live that we all agreed that we were done and we were going to walk away and this was over with, and started his own live. And he had the background on the screen. You can see it. And he sat in that live and discussed what had happened in the live with Indigo, discussed how he didn't believe what people said, discussed how he didn't think people were genuine and all the problems, and picked the entire thing apart.
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm gonna give a shout out to Indigo because they held that space and allowed that conversation to persist. I think everybody handled themselves really well. It kind of got cleared up some things, but not everything. There's some people in the panel who decided to try and martyr themselves and be like, okay, well, I'm just gonna be the victim then. Weird behavior. It's avoiding accountability. Same with like the backhanded apology, like, okay, well, it was a joke, but here, I'm sorry. Like, doesn't stick right. And like in the part talking about like, the boundary, right? Like, don't get your partner to message me. That's a boundary. But you mentioned that he had no problem messaging you. He had me blocked, right? Like, it's frustrating behavior. I guess it's a good thing that I stepped away. But the one takeaway I had from that whole entire live was that nobody seemed to have a real issue with us except for a couple of things. Like Tammy said, I laughed at it. Like, I get it. Maybe I shouldn't have, but like, I didn't do anything indirectly to you. I'm not associating myself with anybody. I'm an adult, right? The only takeaway I got from that is everybody's like, okay, well, Aric and Lola, you talked to this person who's associated with this person who's associated with this person, and they did this and they did that to me. And I'm like, okay, but what about us? What's the issue you have specifically with us? Like, what is the behaviors that myself and you have done in order for you to feel unsafe with us being in this space? No, take blue-haired feminists out of the conversation. What did we do? What did I do? Nothing, right?
We're supposed to walk away and end this. And he sat on that live for hours and hours and talked about us and talked about the MRA community being cultish. Of this all going on, Aric did come to me in DMs on Instagram in a very disrespectful manner. And I told him I wanted no further contact with him because of his connection to this radical feminist, because of my past experience with her. I didn't want anything to do with anybody that was associating with this woman. And he took that opportunity to make sure that he threatened me with the information that he had and how it could expose myself for claiming your voice and Brian Carlson. And I will tell you, if Aric comes forward with this, it shows his disrespect of boundaries, because this feminist has let him know that she gives no permission to him to use anything that she had shared with him about myself, Reclaiming, or Brian Carlson, and that she doesn't want to be drugged back into this. And I'm going to respect that. That's why I'm not using her name. I don't like her and she doesn't like me, and that's fine. We can exist separately and realize that I don't think either of us were on our best behavior during those times, but we did what we did. And now it's 2 years later and it's time that we all move on. Now, one of the things that a lot of people are aware of is I don't really associate with Brian Carlson and haven't since 2022 when all the stuff went down back in the day with him. We've just separated and gone our own ways and left each other alone, and that is completely okay. But I actually unblocked him and reached out to him because his name was also threatened during this, and that wasn't okay, and he deserved to know what was going on also. One of the things that I know that happened during this was this feminist did share a lot of information with Aric and Christina about myself, about our past, about our history.
information and stuff that is one-sided that has been disseminated throughout the space because there are people that have mentioned it to me. Somebody that actually came to me and had a discussion about the evidence that was being launched against me, and I was able to disprove and give timelines for a lot and explain a lot of what had happened back in 2022. At some point in time, we have to move on and realize that people make mistakes. They learn, they grow, they do better. But Aric was very quick to take this information, believe it, not want both sides of every story, and threaten us with allegations to come forward. But he threatened us throughout this. There were multiple videos with veiled threats of, I've got this information and don't make me use it. I can make playlist upon playlist upon playlist. You go do so, sir. You go ahead and you try to make those playlists, because I don't really have anything that I feel like I need to defend myself against a man that platformed toxic feminists within the space, platformed and brought a male feminist into the space, platformed a false accuser into the space. At the same time, knowing that he was putting female MRAs safety at risk and making them feel unsafe and feel in fear. He laughed at that. He mocked men's mental health. He mocked a man that had a panic attack, and the entire time taking no accountability. And when this is all said and done, he attempted to paint the narrative that he was an innocent victim and he was manipulated by a woman that has significant mental health problems and has DID. And I know that you're all standing here going, but do you really know both sides of every story? No, I don't know both sides of every story. But what I do know is Aric's going to people painting one narrative, and I'm being told behind the scenes what he's saying to them. One of the Aftermath Live discussions, Michelle said, has anybody ever considered that maybe Aric's not or maybe Christina's not the bad guy and maybe it's Aric? Something along those lines was said. And that made Christina reach out to Reclaiming Your Voice, Michelle, and open up a dialogue. And Michelle came to me about it and said, I don't trust her, but I don't know what to believe. Are you willing to talk to her? And I said, you know what? I'll talk to anybody. I'll give anybody a chance to explain their side of a story and get down to the bottom of the truth. And Christina didn't come to me with this victim story or this, I didn't do anything wrong. She was very open and honest about some of the bad moves she made and some of the mistakes she made and some of her bad behavior. She was pretty forthright and honest with that. And she took full accountability, which made me be more willing to listen to her. But she actually didn't paint this narrative that Aric was this manipulative person or that he manipulated her or he manipulated Josh. She has 22,000 screen messages, text messages that went back and forth over the course of the last 6 to 8 weeks with Aric. And she shared a huge thousands upon thousands upon thousands of messages with me. So I could read the back and forth. I could see that Aric was not just communicating with Christina. He was communicating with her alters. And I also have group messages between her, Aric, and Josh as they were navigating this polyamorous relationship. I was also given access to Josh's messages that were exchanged back and forth with Aric. And I've read it all and I've seen it all. And I can tell you one thing. Was Josh perfect in this? No, he absolutely wasn't. Was Christina perfect in this? No, she absolutely wasn't. Did they all do some fuck shit wrong? Yes. But I can also very clearly see that Aric had a thing for Christina. He attempted to target her relationship, to steal her away from Josh. And then he attempted to manipulate both her and Christina to paint it as if Josh was this dangerous man and he was going to hurt and abuse Christina. And when all of that didn't work out and Christina and Josh started seeing the truth and stepped away, Aric then scapegoated her within the MRA space. And Aric said in one of his recent videos that we're entitled to have our opinions. And so I do have my opinion. I have the opinion that Aric is a dangerous man. I have my opinion that Aric is a clout chaser. I have my opinion that if Aric decides to leave the men's space, he's going to hop in another space in a few months and become an advocate elsewhere until this uncovers. But the one thing that I realized through this is there is a path of carnage through Aric's history. There's a hate page about him. For goodness sakes, what do you do to get an entire community to make a hate page about you? There is an entire indigenous community that is mad at him that he is not allowed to speak on things in their space because they will come for him.
There's an entire group of MRAs that have been harmed by Aric, and particularly women that have had our safeties put at risk. And it seems that people just are going to let it go because he was manipulated. Even if he were, let's just say he were, let's just say that Christina is the person that he says she is. Let's just say that happened. That doesn't excuse what he has done. That doesn't excuse him invalidating people's trauma. That doesn't excuse him laughing and telling me to get the fuck off of social media. My frustration throughout a lot of this is there are people that instantly accepted him back into the space. And when I didn't understand that, and Michelle didn't understand that, and Tazi didn't understand that, those individuals were telling us that he was highly manipulated and abused by her. But yet, if that were true, why is he interacting with her? Why is he liking her stories currently? Why is he messaging with her? And not only is he doing that, he's affirming that he feels these ways. He's affirming that he had no intention of actually apologizing to us and making this right. Calling somebody a misogynistic incel is words that come out of the mouth of a feminist. It checks with Aric's past as an Indigenous feminist ally. But the man he called that to, within 24 hours of him and Christina's relationship ending, he was sitting in a live with him, laughing and joking, as if he hadn't said or thought those things about that person. I have another question for Aric. If Christina is so manipulative and gaslit you, and that's the reason behind all of your actions, which is the story that you've painted to so many, why are you still in contact with her? Why are you still liking her stories? Why are you liking her stories from burner accounts? For instance, like this one. And my question is, as a white man, why are you using the image of a black man as the profile on your burner account? And why do you like or repost your own videos on your burner accounts? And why do you think that it's appropriate as a white man to use digital blackface? And why the second that you thought potentially we were going to do a takedown of Christina, did you reach out to her, attempt to weasel your way back in? Well, at the same time, admitting that you never had any intention of apologizing and that you think that myself and Michelle and Tazi are bad advocates, but you've never given any reason, because it was only just like a month and a half ago that you were telling us that we were the best advocates, and all of a sudden our behavior changed. Nothing has changed about our behavior, but we used to think you were a good advocate, but I can tell you we don't anymore. Because it's not that your behavior changed, it's that your mask fell and we got to see who you really were, which made us go digging into your past to realize exactly how gross and dirty it is, Aric. But yet, Christina's just the manipulator and the gaslighter, and you didn't do any of this past shit, did you? Doesn't excuse him knowingly participating in bringing people into a safe space that he created for men that could potentially harm the men's advocacy space. So I bet everybody wants to know what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve safety within this men's space. We're trying to stop the drama, but at the same right, we have a right to defend ourselves, and we have a right to tell the world what we're seeing. We have a right to have our opinions on people, and we have a right to feel unsafe and have that be validated and have people recognize that this isn't just drama. False allegations have been made. And at this point in time, we're a space that really advocates against false allegations, but everybody is really quick to believe that Christina is this abusive woman. Everybody was really quick to believe that Josh abused Christina, but nobody really went behind the scenes to do the due diligence. What happened to innocent until proven guilty? And what happened to innocent until proven guilty when it came to myself and Reclaiming Your Voice and Tazi? Everybody made assumptions. A ton of people unfollowed us. A ton of people blocked us in this that never even had a single conversation. They just listened to the words of Aric Jaay and assumed that we were the problem, that we were the bad individuals. As soon as Aric and Christina broke up, he came right back into the space and made his amends with some of the men. But there wasn't really a lot of effort made to make amends with Michelle and I. As I said, it was Brian Carlson that attempted to initiate that. And those talks have never happened. But then Aric made that video. And in the midst of this, I had already deleted all my content and said, I don't even know if I'm coming back into the space. Tassie's already said she'll never identify as an MRA again. Michelle's really on the question mark as to whether or not she wants to be identified as an MRA. There's questions as to whether or not we even wanted to be in this space after what we've witnessed. And the fact that it's so quick to believe that the women are the problem. I also know he even admits that he recognizes that he has male privilege in the space and that he will use that privilege when he calls out certain creators. I do find it quite complimentary and funny that Aric refers to me as the queen bee of the MRA space when, one, I haven't considered myself an MRA since 2022. Two, I'm far from the queen bee of this space. There are many bigger, better creators than I am. And three, he said that he doesn't think that I'll respond or clap back because he knows, I know he will come correctly. Well, guess what, Aric? You should have been prepared. You should have known that I would come correctly. For the three of us, and even for Christina, we love advocating for men. We love the way men share with us. We love the opportunity that men give us to be in their space and to raise up their voices. And advocating for men is not just something I do on this app. It's something I do off this app. It's part of who I am. And I do this because I want my son to have a better future. But I also recognize throughout this, there's a level of misogyny within the space that has seemed to be allowed. And there's a level of acceptance for men doing these things. Well, perfection is expected of us women. And that is a really, really hard thing to live up to. And it's also really hard to live up to when you are triggered into PTSD and you're triggered into trauma and you're not sleeping. And when Aric came back with his apology and we were upset that he made no effort to reach out to us, people said, Eric's been through a lot. We need to give him time. But what nobody understands is we weren't given time. We were not given grace. The second we said anything, we were demonized as participating in the drama. And all we were trying to do was protect our reputation and protect ourselves from what Aric and Christina were doing. So what do I hope to achieve out of this? I want to protect our space from men like Aric Jaay. I want to protect other female advocates and women from men like Aric Jaay. A man that claims to be one thing while exhibiting entirely different behavior throughout his history in multiple communities. I want to know that when allegations are launched against somebody in the community, there's going to be two sides of the story gotten from people. But in this situation, because it was a man putting the story forward, the voices of myself and Michelle were not heard. We were kind of deemed as the problem. We were demonized. And then after the fact, Christina was demonized and none of us were heard. And we advocate for men because we see the struggles of men. But at the same time, we want the men that we advocate for and the men that we advocate side by side with to see our struggles and recognize that we're not perfect, but we deserve a voice too. For everything that we have given to this space, we deserve to be heard and we deserve to be seen and we deserve to voice our opinion and show the community what we're seeing. Because things that Aric has done to people have harmed the mental health of not just the women within this space, but many, many, many men. Now, it's been pretty quiet in the MRA space with everybody. Nobody has said a word about this in, I don't know, a week and a half, 2 weeks. We've all gone our own way. Except for Aric Jaay. He's continuing to talk about it, and he actually is taking words that people are telling him about things that are never going to happen and making videos. The most recent video that he put up was directed at myself, Michelle, Tazzy, and Lola, Christina. And in it, he very well clearly states that somebody told him and that he knows it's coming, that we were going to make public abuse allegations against him and that we were potentially going to dox him.
All right, TikTok, we got to talk for a quick sec. And I'm just going to get right into this one. And I know I've told you guys that I'm trying to disengage from the drama and I'm just trying to go back into advocacy and making the content that I do before. But for some strange reason, there are certain individuals who don't want the drama to go away. Jays have no problem continuously partaking in drama. On top of that, these three individuals have talked previously about how, false allegations are detrimental to men and they cause significant harm to men. Yet for some reason, what they're about to do, they don't really care about. It's been brought to my attention, folks, that 3 women, MRAs, including a potential former partner of mine, are about to release evidence of me being an abuser. Now, when it comes to these allegations about me being a potential abuser, I just want to kind of highlight, how can I do that from 16,000 miles away? How am I able to cause significant harm to somebody from a significant distance away? Like, I also want to highlight right quick that apparently they're going to bring up something along the lines of the international symbol for, being abused. I don't know how that would pertain to me, again, because I'm a significant distance away. A couple of these individuals that actually have my personal information, literally from my personal number to where I live. So the fact that they have that information and they have the ability to spread that information to certain people just because they don't necessarily like me is kind of dangerous. Which ironically, these people also talk about doxing and how it's harmful. These people also talk about how harassment and bullying and targeting is super harmful, yet they have no problem doing it themselves. I'm still gonna stand by the fact that women are more dangerous than men, and nothing is gonna prove to me otherwise. Anyway, folks, when we know better, we do better. So here's hoping that we all do. And remember,
To put that narrative forward without any proof that that's ever going to happen is absolutely disgusting. But also to publicly state and publicly say that female men's rights advocates would accuse a man falsely of abuse is disgusting. Well, as in another country, it is not possible for Aric to have physically abused her. We all know that. It's ridiculous and unhinged that he would even say that. But myself and Michelle, both being victims of doxing, would never do that to a human being. And I believe Christina has his information, but we are never going to be the ones to release it. The fact that he would ever say that is gross. Do we show who he is? Do we show that he's manipulated people? Do we show that we can't always trust the words of Aric Jaay? We absolutely do. But false allegations ruin lives. And I'm a female men's advocate, and I would never put that, even upon Aric Jaay. One final thing. During all of this going on, I mentioned that there were men that felt as if they had been slightly invalidated within Lola and Eric's lives. And one of them happens to be Ledge. And he came into Michelle's live, and Michelle had many, many, many discussions with him. I spent some time talking in lives with him, and ultimately he felt heard. And he felt as if what had happened within Michelle's space had helped him. And when Aric and Lola started talking about this, he went into Lola's comment section because he was aware who they were talking about and said that we had helped him. I said this time and time again, but a safe space for men should never be an unsafe space for women. A safe space for men should never have undertones of misogyny because that makes it unsafe for women. There is a pipeline for men, from men's advocacy into red pill, into MGTOW, into misogyny. And there is a pipeline within men's advocacy into healing where men and women coexist and have amazing relationships. And we need to recognize that some advocates are not safe. And some advocates will fuel that red pill to pipeline to misogyny. And some advocates actually want to elicit healing because it is in the best interest of men and women to find a way to coexist, to find a way to get along. And right now, I can tell you that myself, Michelle, Tazzy, and Christina don't feel like we are in a safe space for women within the men's advocacy space. And that's a really hard place to be for someone like myself that has been in this space and advocating since 2020. That is a long history and a long time in a space to realize that I'm not being protected within this space. And just as I want to garner the safe space that I've created for men, I want it to be safe for all of us. I want us all to be able to come back and do what we want. Now, I don't think Christina will ever return to this space, but she has a right to be on this app. She has a right to be accepted. She has a right to be understood and heard without fear of her reputation being destroyed by a man like Aric Jaay. And look at Eric's response on this. Aric says that we were manipulating him and he's sorry he's being manipulated. This man almost left this space and left TikTok because of Aric.
Has not talked about his trauma for 30 years, but felt safe in my space to do so and tell him I was manipulating him, I was a fraud, and I'm a grifter.
Does it make you feel some type of way?
Yeah, it pisses me off because I spent the day talking to that man privately because he was going to step away from this space and go back into isolation. And I was worried he was going to be number 121.
Yeah, I got you. Out of curiosity, Josh is in the chat, by the way, if you all want to have a chat with him about their relationship.
I don't care about your personal life.
And I know there are other men that have had these experiences. Aric is not a safe space for men, and he's definitely not a safe space for women. He wasn't a safe space for the indigenous community, and he wasn't a safe space for the feminists that he at one point in time was an ally towards. Aric is not a safe space. He is not a safe person. And I don't think that Aric has the ability to self-reflect and realize what he's done, because a lot of his videos, if you watch, there's a pattern of behavior where he points the finger at everybody else, but never really 100% takes accountability for what he has done in this process himself. Aric Jaay is not a safe person. So I'm going to end this video with something very important, something that Aric uses at the end of all of his videos. And what I find horrible about him using it is that he is appropriating the words of a Black woman, Maya Angelou, without ever giving any credit to her great words. So in the words of the amazing Maya Angelou, when we know better, we do better. And here's to hoping that Aric Jaay does better.